Hello, Julian. Thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to the show. First of all, I would like to ask you, a general question about the situation on the ground at the front in Ukraine. How would you evaluate the state right now, state of positions right now, and how tough is the situation for Ukraine?
Well, I would say the situation right now is very tough in Ukraine, but for both sides, I would say, not only for Ukraine. We are seeing extreme fighting, especially in Donetsk Oblast as well as in Kharkiv. There's lesser fighting in Kharkiv, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Luhansk. And we are seeing that in the Donetsk front, the Russian forces are slowly, very slowly advancing. They're taking one, maybe two villages per week, but every week. But this is an incremental advance, I would say, about 1-2 kilometers. And you have to keep in mind that these are absolutely destroyed ruins of villages which they are conquering, you can say. At the same time, you have the same situation in Kharkiv, where Russia built two bridgeheads, one in Lipsky and one around Vovchansk, and there you have intense urban fighting. So you can see where the Ukrainians are really serious about not losing a town. They are giving the Russian army a long battle, which can take for months, or as we saw in the past, even years. If you look at Marinka, this whole battle took 10 years altogether. Yes, and the outcome is still open. Okay, so
recently you wrote the piece where you say that Russian army is trying to cut off the supply routes in Ukraine, in the east, and that there are 7 kilometers left to key highways. What is happening now in this direction, relatively speaking, west of Bakhmut, as I understand? How serious is this?
Yes, we have the so-called Road of Life, which is the road between Kotrikadze on the one side and Chasiv Yar on the other side. And as you know, the Russian army is trying to advance into Chasiv Yar. They are not very successful so far. They are still fighting for the channel quarter. I think for 5 months now. They are fighting for 1 quarter there now. They have parts of the quarter, but not the whole. And also they have to then afterwards advance over the channel into the main districts of Chasiv Yar, which they haven't been successful so far. At the same time, you are right. There is a road leading from the Ekaterina to Chasiv Yar, and this road passes by almost Ekaterina. And as you know, there was a Russian breakthrough in Ekaterina some weeks ago. And ever since, Russia advanced around 5 kilometers to the northwest. And there, as you said, it's another 7 kilometers until they would reach this road. It's not the only road. It wouldn't be a pot or a kettle or something like this. So there would still be other roads. But I've personally been on this road, and it's the biggest one. It's the best one for logistics for Ukraine to defend Chasiv Yar. So if Russia gets this road, and it's not very likely to happen very soon, because, as you know, there was a breakthrough in Ekaterina because there was some rotational problems with the Ukrainian army, and Russia used this and smashed into this hole that what created there and captured Ekaterina and around 6 or 7 villages around. But right now the front is relatively stable, meaning Russia advances meter by meter, but very slow.
And also there has been, all eyes on Kharkiv, as you remember, Kharkiv, and right now, if I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, tell me, a Russian offensive in this region was unsuccessful and it stopped. Do you think that they are not going to try again? What's your prospect on that?
Well, they're actually not stopping. I mean, they're not stopping. They're trying to advance north of Kharkiv, I think 30 kilometers north of Kharkiv city, which is Lipsky direction. But there, Ukrainian has a counteroffensive in Gluboko, which already regained some tree lines, but not the village yet. And then you have the other bridgehead, which tries to gain foothold in Vovchansk. And of course, they are trying the whole time. I mean, they're pushing and pushing. It's not like they stopped and they will try again in a week. They're trying every day. And as soon as the Ukrainian army pulls back, 100 meter, 1 kilometer, Russians will follow their way. So the Ukrainian army is really having a tough battle there. We are seeing hundreds, and I'm really serious, hundreds of FIB 500 bombs raining on Vovchansk every day. So it's unfortunately the pattern of the Russian army and the Putin regime in general that if you don't surrender, we will destroy each and every building, each street. We will make it absolutely uninhabitable. And then Ukrainian army, of course, also has to leave these areas because it's just nowhere to live there. But right now, you're right. There's a tough battle in Vovchansk. And so far, and that's why you were saying in the beginning, they're advancing. Yes, they are. But they captured 25% of Vovchansk only so far. And this is in more than You remember the battle started on one day after Victory Day in Russia on May 10th.
Yeah, but how would you explain, Julian? I mean, this is really interesting. If we try to analyze the situation, the picture in general, right? So we know that Russians have much more weapons and much more manpower. Well, obviously, 100 million people living in there, and there are much more people who are actually mobilized in the Russian army. Why is it so complicated? Why is it so difficult for them to occupy one more village? I mean, every time, every step is so complicated for them.
Yes, I think you make a good point there. The thing is that Russia, yes, it's bigger and it has a bigger army, but it doesn't deploy a bigger army. And if you see how many people were mobilized and how many people are fighting off the front line, it's almost 101. I mean, it's almost 1 million Ukrainians under arms defending the country, and almost 1 million Russian soldiers attacking the country, and of which are, as you know, only 500,000 only. It's very, very big number. Only 500,000 in Ukraine fighting right now. So there you have almost an equal relation between the two armies. It's not like Russia attacks with 10 times or 20 times the soldiers. Just the tactics are very differently. Russia goes in with masses. So they are trying to overrun Ukrainian positions by sending in many mobilized people. You have seen in the past that they were sending in former prisoners. They are sending in people who they fought in some areas which just couldn't defend and were sent to the front. And Ukraine, on the other side, is not doing this. They're not having their whole army on the front and getting all the bombs. They're trying to be smart. They're trying to have, for example, kamikaze drones, FPV drones. You have seen this a lot. They're trying to have these American and German delivered ammunitions there for 155 millimeter artillery, as well as for HIMARS and other heavy weapon systems. So they try to pull back slowly, intelligently by doing most harm to the Russians. Of course, they don't want to surrender villages. But if you see what's happening there, if you see that the Russian army is losing every month between 50 and 80 main battle tanks and around 250 armored vehicles in Ukraine, this is not sustainable. This is nothing that Russia can hold out forever.
And right now, I cannot avoid this question. You are talking about the long-range missiles and, weaponry that are delivered to Ukraine from the West. Yes, with the delay, but anyways, they are getting this weapon. So do you expect some changes on the ground because of this long-range missiles and this green light that Ukraine has got about hitting the Russian territory?
Yes. I think many people are saying that time is playing for Putin because he is a dictator. He can stay in power forever. He just has to wait until everything crumbles. But I think this is not the case anymore. If you see what's happening on the other side, if you see what was just happening in Switzerland, if you see how all the Putin proposals were absolutely rejected and people in the West were laughing about this. I mean, right after Putin said, if NATO arms Ukraine, there will be nuclear war. NATO said, now we are directly coordinating arms supply to Ukraine. Peskov said, if you're attacking directly with sophisticated weapons, our territory, we regard you and you, the West, you, Britain, you, Storm Shadow suppliers or whoever, as hostile. We're doing all this and nothing happens. So I think right now, Ukraine is in a very terrible situation, you have to say, because every day 100 or 200 men on each side are dying. On the other side, or at the same time, I think the supply is steady. No one wants to negotiate. With Putin. No one allows Putin to threaten us and not arming Ukraine anymore. So I think if you see the numbers, if you see that we are supplying more and more artillery shells per month, and next year, allegedly, Europe, without the United States, Europe will produce as many artillery shells as Russia does next year, then I think the time is not really in Putin's favor. And this is why I think he makes these proposals of saying, okay, we can negotiate tomorrow if you just withdraw, if Ukrainian forces just withdraw from Ukraine, which they will not do, of course. But that's, I think, the desperation level we have in the Kremlin right now.
First of all, I cannot avoid this. Where are you right now? And what is on your background? I can see the tanks or something. I'm not a military specialist, but where are you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you just catch me at the Eurosatory, which is one of the biggest arms fairs in Europe. I think the biggest one. Behind me, you can see American soldiers with a Bradley on the left side, with an Abrams on the right side, and both were deployed to Ukraine, by the way. The left one in their hundreds, I think, by now. Yes, and here even at this arms fair, there's much talk. If you talk to suppliers, to arms factories, everyone is looking at Ukraine. Everyone is saying, by the way, we have this system which could be useful for the Ukrainian army. No one here, and here are dozens and dozens of countries, from Japan to South Korea to you name it. No one here thinks about supplying weapons to Russia. So I think if you see the dynamics, if you see what's going on, that here are Middle East companies, which are not publicly, but then off the record saying, oh yeah, by the way, this vehicle is already driving in Kharkiv. This is the dynamics I mean. And I think Russia will be more and more on its own as long as China doesn't decide to intervene and to supply weapons to Russia, which it doesn't so far.
Where and how you collect the information that you publish? Is it difficult to collect information being outside Ukraine? How do you work? And it's obviously successful. So how do you get this result done?
Yes, you're absolutely right. There have been interesting days where Russian war bloggers, even active in Ukraine, quoted my reports on the one side saying, oh, you see, even the Germans are admitting we captured this little Berushi village there, and then saying on the other side, but that's all propaganda because the Germans will never supply this and that weapon. So that's really interesting. And you're absolutely right. They are quoting me whenever it suits them, whenever they think it's a good story and it fits their narrative. They're not quoting me when I'm saying that every day 100 or 200 Russians are being killed because of their officers just don't care, and general staff in Moscow just doesn't care about Russian lives.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yes, I mean, this is, as you know, my daily business. I've been doing my Build Lagezentrum, in English it will be Build Situation Room, and we have been producing the 381st episode yesterday. And this is a lot of knowledge, a lot of sources I'm collecting there. And I have no magic sources there. I'm collecting everything from mainly Russian internet, from Telegram, from other sources, from VKontakte here, from TikTok even. And what I try to do then is make sense of it. So I'm not just putting it out and saying this is what the situation is. This is what Mr. Zelensky says. So this is a fact. No, I'm saying this is what Mr. Zelensky says. This is what 3 other Russian bloggers having drones about the scene are saying. So who is saying the truth? And I think this format is working quite well. You can see this in our numbers, and you also see this in our quotes that we are trying. Of course, I mean, it's no secret that Bild is pro-Ukrainian. We still have a Ukrainian flag in front of our headquarters, but still we're trying to do objective journalism there, and even telling truths which many Ukrainians, unfortunately, because they are so hard-beat truths, don't like to hear.
One more thing, considering the objectivity and statements that are being made by Vladimir Zelensky or others, there was a turbulence considering Mr. Zaluzhny, the head of Ukrainian Army Command. And right now, he is replaced by Mr. Syrsky. Do you see any changes, radical changes in Ukrainian army? And would you say that it was a good decision to be made by Zelensky?
Well, I think from Zelensky's point of view, it was a very good decision, because now you have a commander-in-chief who's not opposing you publicly, and who's not saying publicly that the president is wrong and we are not that successful. We cannot make this counter-offensive. We need more men mobilized. So from his perspective, of course, it was a very good decision to send Mr. Zaluzhny to Great Britain. I think from the battlefield situation, it's slightly different. I think it's always good to have generals with a mind of their own, who are expressing their views, their worries, because they are closer to the army. And I think generally speaking, it's not a good idea to replace generals to make them more loyal to the politicians, because politicians, of course, always have the aim to liberate the country. That's the biggest aim, of course, in Ukraine right now. They want to liberate the East, they want to liberate Crimea. Yeah. But you have to have a realistic view on how you do this and what is possible to achieve. And I think since Mr. Syrsky took office, Ukraine has not liberated a single square meter. And I think he needs this successor soon in the future to also build a reputation like Mr. Zaluzhny had.
Thank you so much. And I really hope to see you again soon, because the situation is changing rapidly. And I would really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, Julian.
Absolutely. Thank you.